model-driven power apps. They sound impressive, don't they? Enterprise-grade automation, secure data modeling, governance ready. It's the kind of pitch that gets managers nodding before asking a single question because it sounds responsible. Serious. Adult. The words alone give off a whiff of engineering gravitas, like wearing a lab coat for clicking buttons in a browser. But the truth? Most Power Platform projects that start with model-driven ideals end up drowning in their own ambition. They aren't building productivity, they're building infrastructure for the idea of productivity. Professionals fall for it because the vocabulary feels weighty. Tables in Dataverse, complex security roles, granular permissions, dashboards that no one checks. It all feels so sophisticated you almost forget you're recreating a to-do list with bureaucracy attached. And yet, all you've built is a fortress around a spreadsheet. That's the great model-driven mirage. On paper, it promises automation nirvana. In reality, it demands a PhD in Dataverse maintenance. It's sold as future-proof IT. What it delivers is more IT. You didn't centralize data, you centralize pain. So let's dismantle the myth. I'll show you why model-driven apps overcomplicate problems, why their so-called scalability is theoretical, and how a fusion team, your existing people using Teams, SharePoint lists, and Power Automate, accomplishes the same goal in half the time and a tenth of the stress. And before we're done, I'll reveal the single configuration that silently cripples most model-driven deployments. Yes, it's something your admin probably enabled for security. Take a breath. Now, let's begin. The Dataverse delusion. Here's the part Microsoft's marketing politely whispers in small print. Model-driven apps can't exist without Dataverse. No Dataverse, no app. That dependency isn't optional, it's structural. The so-called data backbone is less a spine and more an anchor. You start craving enterprise-grade capability, but what you actually install is a commitment trap. Building your data model sounds simple at first. Create your tables, relationships, and forms, until you realize you've entered an infinite loop of entity definitions, lookups, and column-level security. Every element of Dataverse demands configuration. You're not innovating, you're babysitting. And that's before you touch security roles, those baroque permission matrices designed to ensure that no one, including you, ever edits a record again. It's enterprise-grade, all right, enterprise-grade babysitting. A single missing privilege can break a form in ways that defy human logic. Congratulations, you just spent 3 hours troubleshooting a checkbox. Compare Dataverse setup to assembling IKEA furniture, except every Allen wrench is premium, every screw is built monthly, and halfway through the manual changes names. You wanted automation, you got assembly instructions written by finance. Then there's licensing. Dataverse isn't included with your warm enthusiasm for Power Apps. You're paying for environments, storage, and user access. Each environment, development, test, production, needs its own allocation, often with separate governance and backup schedules. You thought you were saving time by going low-code? Instead, you're budgeting like a CFO on performance review day. Governance? Delightful. Every column, every relationship, every form, every permission, each must align with your organization's security posture. One misconfigured field and suddenly your model-driven app throws eternal record not found errors. And no, the record isn't missing. It's sitting right there, sulking behind a misscoped business unit. People love to call Dataverse a platform. I call it an ecosystem of dependencies. It's built for people designing ERP-level systems, procurement pipelines, compliance auditing, large-scale resource management. It's not built for teams that just want to track project tasks or automate an approval. For that, Dataverse is the equivalent of using an aircraft carrier to deliver a pizza. But I'll be fair, Dataverse is powerful. The problem isn't that it can't handle your data, it's that it always assumes you'll have 10 times more of it later. It's built to scale, but you pay the tax of that scalability whether you need it or not. It's like installing an industrial freezer to keep one sandwich fresh. Most organizations don't need a database that enforces referential integrity across 6 environments. They need something that lets a project coordinator update status without calling IT for permissions. Dataverse makes that feel like an act of rebellion. So yes, Dataverse is the mansion. It has wings, corridors, servant quarters, and impressive architecture. But most business workflows, they just need a well-built apartment. Roomy enough to get work done, simple enough that anyone can find the light switch. That's where we transition from the fantasy of constructing digital cathedrals to the pragmatic reality of collaboration. Because when real productivity matters, you stop buying chandeliers and start installing door handles that actually open. The complexity tax. Let's talk about the hidden tax no one budgets for. Complexity. Model-driven apps excel at producing it. They arrive wrapped in corporate respectability, structured forms, standardized views, cohesive user interface, and then quietly invoice you for every change request. The interface may look stable, but it's stability the way concrete is stable. Once it's poured, you'll need heavy equipment to move anything. You start with a simple goal: capture project updates. The model-driven approach insists on defining entities, relationships, and view columns before you even enter the first record. Need an extra field? Prepare to update your table, adjust the form, reapply permissions, republish the solution, and notify governance that your audacious creativity has altered the schema. You thought you were running a workflow. Turns out you're now a part-time database administrator. And the user experience? Rigid. Every form looks like it was designed in the early 2001s and frozen in amber. Buttons land where they want, not where users expect. Conditional formatting? Minimal. Visual polish? None. It's utilitarian to the point of cruelty. Your colleagues open the app once, admire its bureaucratic confidence, and then continue tracking everything in Excel, because at least there, they can color-code progress without submitting a change request to IT. Here's the real bottleneck: governance latency. In a model-driven ecosystem, every modification travels through committees. Each committee reviews alignment with solution lifecycle practices, which is corporate language for please wait indefinitely while we debate risk posture. By the time your request clears, the business need has evolved. Congratulations, you're launching last quarter's requirements tomorrow. And yet, teams rarely abandon the platform midstream. That's the sunk cost trap. They've already spent months constructing the schema, so quitting feels like heresy. They redefine the work as strategic investment instead of ongoing ordeal. The more time and money poured in, the harder it becomes to admit the obvious. The problem wasn't the team, it was the architecture. Let me give you a real example. A client once asked for a simple request tracker, 2 lists, 3 approval steps. In their zeal for best practices, IT insisted on making it robust. Out came Dataverse, cascading relationships, and role-based dashboards. 6 months later, they proudly unveiled a tool so intricate it could manage global customer pipelines. Only nobody needed that. The original business unit refused to use it. They built a SharePoint list instead and finished during the testing phase of the other project. They wanted SharePoint-level simplicity and got SAP-level bureaucracy. Complexity always feels important while you're building it. It flatters the builder. Every decision seems consequential, but once maintenance season arrives, the flattery evaporates, replaced by tickets and training calls. That's the tax. Every tiny change costs exponentially more because the structure forbids spontaneity. Now, if you're wondering how to build that same capability faster, cheaper, and in apps your users actually open voluntarily, excellent instinct. You're ready to leave the model-driven estate behind and walk into the neighborhood where collaboration actually happens. And that's exactly where our next section leads, into the world of fusion teams, where productivity got tired of pretending to be infrastructure. Enter the fusion team. Enter the fusion team, the antidote to architectural vanity. This isn't a new app type, it's a philosophy. Build where your users already live, automate what matters, and stop mistaking data for destiny. Fusion teams are what happen when business people and makers stop waiting for IT's permission to be efficient. It's democratic computing, the union of those who understand the problem with those who can drag and drop the solution. A fusion team uses what Microsoft already handed you: Teams, SharePoint lists, and Power Automate, with a light dusting of Power Apps or Power BI if required. Think of it as Dataverse Lite assembled from tools everyone already opens before the morning coffee. You're not forcing anyone to launch their enterprise app because the workspace is Teams. The data lives in SharePoint lists. The automation hums quietly in the background. It's automation that behaves like wallpaper, useful, invisible, ignored until it stops working. Here's the ideology behind it. Model-driven apps centralize control, fusion teams distribute competence. In the former, IT dictates fields and access rights. In the latter, people who actually use the system shape it. When business users can rename a column without triggering an audit cycle, that's progress. You gain velocity because decision latency decreases. Every approval flows through humans who still remember what the app is for. SharePoint lists do the unglamorous heavy lifting. Columns equal Dataverse tables. Lookup columns mimic relationships. View, sort, filter, and group, exactly what a manager needs to see. No need for system tables, metadata schemas, or lineage tracking. The data lives where collaboration already happens. It's relational enough for real work, yet shallow enough that nobody drowns in it. Now, bring in Power Automate, the nervous system. It handles notifications, approvals, reminders, and cross-system nudges. When a task status changes, the flow notifies the owner, updates records, and logs the audit trail that governance loves to quote. The magic here isn't the automation, it's that it's transparent. Anyone can open the flow and trace what's happening. Compare that to Dataverse's background processes, silent, opaque, and usually broken. The user interface? Teams. Not an abstract portal, not another URL that people bookmark and forget, a tab in the channel they already live in. You can surface the SharePoint list right there, or better yet, drop adaptive cards into chat threads so updates become part of the conversation. Productivity doesn't require ceremony, it just shows up in the chat where people argue about deadlines. And yes, Teams needs no deployment plan. It's on every desktop, often stubbornly so. Calling it a rollout is like announcing a new species of oxygen. You simply attach your solution. The delivery mechanism already squats on the user's taskbar like an uninvited roommate who now pays rent and utility. Let's make this tangible. Picture a project tracking scenario, a list that holds project name, owner, due date, and status. Add a Power Automate flow to send approvals when status becomes ready for review. Assign owners via Microsoft 365 groups, update statuses automatically, and post a summary card back into the Teams channel. Within an afternoon, you've replicated 80% of a model-driven app's value and done it without provisioning environments, begging for licenses, or sacrificing weekends to governance workshops. The outcome? Shared ownership. When something breaks, the team fixes it. When a new column's needed, the owner adds it. There's no ticket queue, no escalation path, just collective competence. It's not chaos, it's controlled freedom. Lightweight, adjustable, and faster than any formal system lifecycle can offer. That's the elegance of Fusion teams. Small loops, transparent logic, familiar tools, no ceremony, no over-engineering, no Dataverse dependency text. Now that you understand the architecture that actually serves humans rather than impresses auditors, the next step is proof. Let's build one together, practically, visibly, and in less time than it takes a model-driven dashboard to load. Building the better way. All right, theory time is over. Let's build something properly this time. No Dataverse, no security matrix, no environment provisioning, just a functional solution that humans can understand and maintain. This is the Fusion team method in action. Structure, automate, and surface where people already work. Ready? Good. Step 1. First, we start with a SharePoint list. The humble misunderstood list, Microsoft's oldest multi-tool. Create a new site or use an existing one, then click New List. Name it Project Tracker. Add columns, project name, owner, due date, and status. That's the skeleton. You can add extras later, like priority or budget. The only rule here is restraint. Resist the urge to emulate Dataverse. Each additional column invites future maintenance. And remember, this isn't an ERP, this is clarity disguised as a list. Next, we assign lookup relationships. Suppose every project has a related client. Fine, add a lookup column to your clients list. No referential nightmares, no cascading deletes, just a friendly hyperlink between two lists. Want to allow multiple clients? A simple checkbox handles that. In Dataverse, you'd summon a wizard, a schema update, and a solution deployment. Here, it's 2 clicks that don't require governance approval. And you've just simulated relational data. Once your structure looks right, open the list in grid view. Add mock data to test filters and grouping. SharePoint renders this faster than most model-driven dashboards can load a single form. Within 5 minutes, you'll see project cards grouped by status or owner. Congratulations, you have a functional data source and a visual pivot in one place. No JSON, no environment variables, no 7-page security matrix. You just built Dataverse Lite. Now we add motion, Power Automate. Go to the Automate tab in your list. Choose Create a Flow and start with the template when an item is modified. Give it logic if the status equals ready for review, then send an approval request to the owner. Add branches for approved or rejected and update the status column accordingly. Optional, post a message in Teams to inform the group. Done. Your list now behaves like a workflow engine. Not bad for 15 clicks. A word of professional restraint. Automation is candy. Too much, and you'll end up in governance detox. Limit your triggers to what actually matters. Status changes, due dates, major approvals. Don't automate notifications for every edit or you'll invent your own spam department. Remember, simplicity keeps ownership human. Now let's integrate the experience into Teams. Go to the project channel, add a new tab, choose SharePoint and link your list. Rename the tab Tracker. Everyone sees live data without leaving their workspace. You can stop there and already outperform most internal apps. But let's go further for style points. Create a Power Automate flow that posts adaptive cards when a project moves to approved. The card can include the project name, due date, and a button to mark it as complete. This turns Teams from a chat room into a control center. People act on items as they discuss them, context and action in the same pane. That's not an integration, that's just efficient design. If you crave visuals, embed a Power BI tile or a lightweight Power App inside another tab. Power BI gives execs their view-by-quarter dashboards. Power Apps if you must give end users pretty buttons. But note the distinction. These are enhancements, not dependencies. Everything still works if a connector fails because the foundation, the SharePoint list, is solid and owned by the team. Performance? Excellent. There's no API throttle drama, no Dataverse storage anxiety, no environment migration nonsense. The list lives within the same Microsoft 365 tenancy you already authenticate to daily. Backups run automatically. Even better, permissions inherit from Teams. If you're in the channel, you have access. Governance is a line on a SharePoint admin spreadsheet, not a thesis topic. Maintaining it even simpler. Need a new column? Add it. Want to change an approval condition? Open the flow, tweak, save. No deployment ceremonies, no solution layers. The feedback loop becomes measured in minutes. That responsiveness is what kills most over-engineered systems. They move too slowly for real business rhythm. Of course, there are classic mistakes to avoid. The first is trying to mimic Dataverse within your list, creating 20 lookup columns and nested structures just to feel enterprise. Stop doing that. You're not impressing anyone. You're reinventing the same bureaucracy we just escaped. The second mistake, automation inflation. One team adds a flow, another adds three, and soon every status change triggers a confetti storm of redundant alerts. Centralize your flows, test them, document them once. Fusion teams thrive on transparency, not noise. When finished, what you'll have isn't less ambitious, it's focused. The same business value delivered in days instead of quarters. Managers can see status updates in real time. It isn't guarding the gates. Users feel ownership. And if anyone still asks, but is it scalable? Smile politely and schedule section 5. Because yes, your manager will ask exactly that. They always do. And that's where we'll entertain the last myth, scalability, the polite excuse for unnecessary complexity. The scalability mirage. Yes, scalability. The great conversation ender of corporate IT. You mention it in a meeting and everyone nods like philosophers approving gravity. We need Dataverse because it scales. Wonderful sentiment. If anyone actually knew what that meant in practice. Let's translate. In plain English, scales is often code for we don't want to rebuild this later, so let's overbuild it now. Here's the problem. 80% of business apps never reach the mythical conditions that require Dataverse scale. They track tasks, maybe they log issues, occasionally they store approvals for compliance. None of that approaches the threshold where Dataverse's fancy capabilities, row-level security, complex relationships, transactional integrity are even remotely necessary. But because enterprise readiness sounds noble, people spend months buying insurance against a failure that will never occur. SharePoint lists and Power Automate handle thousands of records with ease, tens of thousands if structured correctly. Index your columns, archive old data annually, and you'll be fine. That's not speculation, it's observable behavior in countless organizations that run mission-critical operations entirely from lists. You don't need a Ferrari to make school runs. You need something reliable, cheap to refuel, and trivial to fix. And security, the usual claim is that Dataverse provides superior protection. Yes, it also provides superior complexity. Most data in these processes already lives within Microsoft 365 security boundaries. If you trust Teams chats and OneDrive documents, you trust SharePoint storage. Dataverse doesn't magically encrypt sincerity into bits. It just introduces additional roles, tables, and audit logs no normal person understands. Governance improves when people comprehend it, not when software obscures it. Then there's migration hysteria, the idea that once you start light, you're trapped forever. That's a myth propagated by consultants paid to assist migrations. In reality, exporting data from SharePoint to Dataverse later is as trivial as clicking export to Excel and re-importing. It's not elegant, it's practical. Think of Fusion Teams as your test lab. You prove the concept cheaply, validate value quickly, and migrate after success, not before it. Scalability isn't about the size of your database. It's about the elasticity of your process. A SharePoint list operated by engaged users will outperform an abandoned Dataverse fortress staffed by auditors. Human governance, not schema design, is what fails most systems. When ownership fades, performance collapses. Dataverse doesn't prevent that, it just records it with more metadata. So when someone insists on Dataverse for scalability, ask a simple question. Scale to what? If no one can attach a number or timeline to that aspiration, you've just diagnosed a cultural habit, not a technical need. You upgrade when you outgrow, not when the sales deck told you to. So let's close the loop. Fusion Teams give you a learning platform, a flexible starter kit. Use it to deliver outcomes, gather evidence, and when you genuinely reach complexity hell, multiple integrations, custom APIs, regulated data, fine, graduate to Dataverse. That's evolution, not dogma. Because scalability isn't a property of software, it's a behavior of teams. And teams that collaborate in familiar tools already scale better than any schema Microsoft could invoice. The efficiency thesis. So what's the real lesson here? Model-driven apps aren't evil, they're just pretentious first gear. They promise a race car ride but hand you a multi-axle truck idling in compliance. Real productivity isn't born in governed environments. It lives where people already talk, share, and act. That's teams with SharePoint lists, moderated by Power Automate, the trio that forms the modern Fusion team. In that ecosystem, solutions evolve like organisms, not monuments. Users notice a gap, fix it, and move on. Business adapts faster than governance can issue memos. You trade hierarchy for iteration. And yes, it works, quietly, cheaply, repeatedly. The metric worth worshipping isn't scale or architecture, it's turnaround time. The shorter the loop between idea and implementation, the healthier the system. Fusion teams embody that principle, low friction, shared ownership, transparent logic. So no, the model-driven approach isn't dead, it's just misplaced. Save it for the systems that genuinely need it. Compliance hubs, multi-entity integrations, data warehouses with pedigrees. For everything else, trust the simpler stack. Complexity isn't sophistication, it's debt dressed in PowerPoint. If complexity were a KPI, Dataverse would be winning. Fortunately, it's not. If you found this uncomfortably honest yet strangely liberating, excellent. That means you're thinking correctly. Subscribe, follow, or whatever verb Microsoft rebrands it as next month. because the next myth deserves the same treatment. We'll keep dismantling corporate over-engineering one buzzword at a time. Efficiency isn't luck, it's refusing unnecessary friction. Choose that.